Before the Age of Crystals, before the fantasies became final, there was a single word that defined adventure: Erdrick. It is a name whispered across generations, a title earned, not given. A legend that bound together three journeys, spanning centuries, kingdoms and worlds, yet all connected by the light of one hero's will. With Dragon Quest I and II HD2D Remake on the horizon, the stage is set to complete what began long ago. A trilogy that doesn't just define the origin of Dragon Quest, but the origin of the jrpg mythos itself. Before there was a chosen hero, before there was Alefgard, before anyone knew the meaning of the word Dragon Quest, there was a nameless adventurer from the land of Aliahan. A hero who would forge a legend so powerful it would echo through time. This is the story of the Erdrick Trilogy, Dragon Quest III, I and II, retold as it was meant to be, a saga of creation, legacy, and the unbreakable spirit of heroism. I'm Arcadenaut here, and today we are tracing the journey that built the foundation of a genre, from the birth of a hero to the rise of a legend. The story begins not at the end, but at the very beginning of time, in the King of Aliahan, a peaceful land that still believes in gods and heroes, and here a young adventurer awakens on their 16th birthday to the sound of destiny. The king's words are simple, yet heavy with meaning. Your father, Ortega, set out to defeat the archfiend Baramos. He never returned, now it falls to you. It is a classic setup, but what makes Dragon Quest III legendary isn't its premise, it is the journey that redefines it. For the first time in the series, you are not a descendant of Erdrick. You are destined to become Erdrick. This is the origin of the myth. The story of how the title, the symbol, and the lineage came to be. Your adventure begins on a globe of possibilities, an entire world to explore, inspired by Earth's own continents, but reimagined in Enix's mythic tone, and you form your own party. From warriors to mages, clerics, merchants, thieves, set out to find Baramos, a demon king whose shadow stretches across the land. Each continent you visit feels like a mythic echo. Egypt becomes Isis, Japan becomes Nippon, Rome becomes Romali, and through it, Dragon Quest III becomes not just a fantasy, but a retelling of humanity's own hero stories through the lens of Toriyama's art and Horii's writing. Basically, it is a pilgrimage through archetypes that shaped the JRPGs back in 1988. And yet, under the surface, there is something darker, a feeling that Baramos is just the beginning. When you finally complete your journey and you finally defeat Baramos, the world rejoices, the king crowns you as a hero, the people celebrate, and peace returns. Briefly, but in that silence, a new voice rises, a deeper shadow awakens. So, Baramos is gone, and yet you stand before me, mortal. I am Zoma, the lord of the underworld. That moment defines Dragon Quest III. The illusion of victory shatters. You realize that the surface world was only half the truth. And beneath it lies Alefgard, a land drowned in eternal night. And the moment you step into this realm, everything changes. The music fades to silence, the world is smaller, more isolated, the light of Aliahan feels like a distant dream. It is the moment Dragon Quest becomes myth. This new realm, it doesn't feel like a new world, but actually the shadow of one. Every step downward feels like walking into the myth that will someday become history, because here you don't just fight monsters, you confront the origin of darkness, Zoma. And Zoma isn't another conqueror or a false god. He is the embodiment of despair, the rejection of creation itself. He mocks you for bringing light into a world that will only breed more suffering and tells you the world doesn't deserve dawn. That peace is just a pause between tragedies. What Dragon Quest III does marvelously here is that it presents the origin events of the very first Dragon Quest here. Zoma's world is indeed the blueprint for the original Dragon Quest I. You realize that you literally walked through the creation of the world that started it all. Every castle, every cave, every landmark in Dragon Quest I originates from here. In Dragon Quest III, you witnessed the world before it became history. And when you finally face Zoma, he doesn't just threaten the world. He embodies despair itself, as a being who tells you that light and hope are just illusions. And as you strike the final blow, Zoma's words echo through the eternity. So the light returns to the world once more. But know this, where there is light, there shall always be shadow. With both Baramos and Zoma destroyed, the world is reborn, and as the hero stands atop Alefgard's dawn, the people ask for your name. Tell us, hero, what shall we call you? So your story is never forgotten. The screen slowly fades, and in that silence, you type it. Erdrick. From this point forward, what starts with your father Ortega the hero becomes your own legend. Erdrick is not just a name, but it becomes a symbol, a title passed down generation after generation. That's what makes Dragon Quest III timeless. It is not just the first step as chronologically, it is the reason the rest of the series exists. The HD2D remake captures that feeling perfectly. The golden sunlight, the glow of magic, the soft tilt shift depth, every frame is nostalgia reimagined as a restoration of myth. You're not just replaying a retro game, you are walking through the book of creation, rediscovering why this story became the beating heart of the jrpg genre. And finally, as the credits roll, you realize the story hasn't ended. It only just begun. The world you saved will soon become the world that forgets you. When the next hero rises, they will only know your name, Erdrick, but not the person who bore it. Centuries have passed since the hero of Aliahan vanished into myth, and the age of creation gave the way to the age of memory. The name Erdrick became something sacred. Where once his deeds were known, now only stories remain. Children whisper them in bedtime tales, kings speak of them in reverence, and deep within the ruins of Alefgard, shadows remember. This is the world of Dragon Quest I, the beginning of everything for players, but the middle chapter of the Erdrick saga. In this world, Alefgard stands divided, once a land of light, now plunged into darkness after the rise of a new evil, the Dragonlord. He stole the sacred light orb from Tantegel Castle, spreading despair and chaos across the realm. Where Zoma once sought to rule through fear, the Dragonlord rules through temptation, as his offer is simple and sinister. Half the world is yours if you join me. During the events of the first Dragon Quest, you are not the original Erdrick, but his descendant, a remnant of his bloodline who still carries the unyielding spirit of the hero. You are nameless, alone, and unproven. Yet your task is to reclaim the relics of Erdrick, his sword, shield, and token. and then restore the light to the world that forgot Erdrick. Unlike Dragon Quest III's sprawling continents and party-based adventures, Dragon Quest I feels almost claustrophobic. From the very first moment till the end, there is no party member to rely on, no grand orchestration or anything. It's just you, your sword, and the unknown. And maybe that's what makes it so powerful. You feel like the warrior of light of the first Final Fantasy, as your each step forward in Dragon Quest I feels earned. Every monster slain is a small victory against isolation, and you feel the lineage. Not through the story exposition, but through your journey. The world might not remember Erdrick, but you do. Every step you take, every piece of equipment you find, they are all fragments of that memory. When you finally wield Erdrick's sword, it is not just a stat boost. It is also a connection to the past, a reminder that you are part of something greater. And I'm sure this feeling of lineage would even be grander in Dragon Quest I and II HD2D Remake experience. Every ruin you walk into, whether a town or maybe Alefgard, these are fossilized memories of the world Erdrick once saved. All trace their roots back to Dragon Quest III. The quiet town of Kol, where travelers rest by the hot springs, is one of the few settlements that has survived since Erdrick's age. It was once a humble sanctuary built in the final days of Zoma's rule, a village that refused to abandon faith in the night. And centuries later, that same spring still flows, as a relic of the hero's era, and the people still continue to hum a melody set to soothe even the most restless spirits, a song passed down from those who once witnessed the dawn of Alefgard. To the east lies Domdora, once a proud trading hub during the Age of Creation. In Dragon Quest III, you may remember meeting a scholar there, a researcher who dreamed of building a protector of stone. His work was dismissed by most as fantasy, but his notes and his ambition endured. Generations later, that same research would give birth to the golem of Dragon Quest series, the tireless guardian who defends the ruins of Domdora in Dragon Quest I. You don't just face a monster there, you face one of Erdrick's unintended legacies, a creation born from humanity's attempt to preserve itself after his passing. Or even the Rainbow Drop, the sacred bridge of light used to reach the Dragonlord's castle, that is originating from the Age of Erdrick. The sages of Alefgard, inspired by Hero's victory over Zoma, learned to channel the same purifying energy that once banished the darkness. That knowledge survived only as a ritual, until you rediscover it on your own journey. Then there's the Tantagal Castle, which is the heart of Alefgard, also the very ball of light stolen by the Dragonlord, a relic of Erdrick's final triumph. When Zoma fell and Alefgard first saw the sun, that orb was said to have formed from the first ray of dawn, a crystallized fragment of the hero's victory handed down as both protection and as a memory. Its theft doesn't merely plunge the world into darkness, it symbolically erases the proof that light ever existed. At the end of your journey, you reach Charlock Castle, the dark reflection of Tantagal, where the Dragonlord awaits. Cloaked in purple flame, his voice is smooth, his tone inviting. He doesn't threaten you, he simply offers. If you will join me, we shall rule the world together. Half will be yours. It is one of the most defining moments in the jrpg history, a moment that gives you a choice. You can say yes, and if you do, he actually keeps his word. The screen fades to black, the message appears. The Dragonlord was true to his word, the hero ruled half the world in darkness. You refuse the offer and you face the Dragonlord's true form, a monstrous dragon that embodies the despair of a kingdom, and when he finally falls, light returns to Alefgard. And then the prophecy is fulfilled. The king offers you his throne, but you decline. Instead, you set out into the wilderness with Princess Gwelin to build a new kingdom, a new beginning, and though your name may fade, your bloodline will endure. Because what began with Erdrick does not end with this hero. It simply continues, but even the brightest flames cast long shadows. Generations later, the world would once again fall into darkness, not by the loss of hope, but by the burden of inheritance. Generations have passed since the descendant of Erdrick restored peace to Alefgard. The world has expanded, kingdoms have flourished, and the once isolated realm has become only a small corner of a greater tapestry. But history in the world of Dragon Quest is cyclical. When people forget the cost of light, the darkness returns. This is the age of Moonbrook, Cannock, and Midenhall. The age of Dragon Quest II, the chapter that closes the Erdrick saga and transforms myth into legacy. And its story opens not with triumph, but with tragedy. Moonbrook Castle burns, its walls crumble under the assault of monsters led by sorcerer Hargon, servant of a forgotten god. A lone soldier escapes through the fire, bearing a desperate message. Hargon seeks to summon the god of destruction, Malroth. He staggers to the neighboring kingdom of Midenhall and collapses before the young prince, the last descendant of Erdrick's line. And thus, your journey begins, not in peace, but in inheritance. In Dragon Quest II, you are not just fighting evil, you are fighting the shadow of the past. The weight of expectation that comes with being the descendant of a legend. But the tragedy of this era begins long before the fires of Moonbrook, long before the cult, before the summoning of Malroth. It begins with a man who once served the light, Hargon, the high priest of the Dragon Queen. In the age of Erdrick, during the events of Dragon Quest III, Hargon wasn't a name whispered in fear, but one spoken with reverence. He was a devout servant in the castle of the Dragon Queen, a man of faith whose purpose was to preserve life, not end it. When the Dragon Queen's health began to fail, Hargon was among those who tended to her final days. He watched helplessly as the once mighty guardian of Alefgard faded, her light dimming as Zoma's darkness consumed the world. When she used the last of her strength to give Erdrick the sphere of light, she gave not only her power, but her life, entrusting the fate of the world to a mortal. For Hargon, it was unbearable. The queen's death shattered his fate. He couldn't understand how the gods could allow the being who had protected the world since time immemorial to die in such solitude. When Zoma fell and the pit of Giaga sealed, trapping Erdrick in Alefgard, Hargon remained behind, keeping vigil over the Dragon Queen's egg, the last remnant of her divine lineage. He swore an oath to protect it, promising that her bloodline would live on. However, that egg would eventually give birth to Dragonlord of Dragon Quest I, the being who would one day challenge Erdrick's descendants. However, while the queen's child grew in silence, Hargon's heart decayed. In that loneliness, in centuries of devotion without purpose, his fate curdled into resentment. He began to see the world as unworthy of the light the Dragon Queen sacrificed herself to preserve. In the centuries between Erdrick's sacrifice and the fall of Moonbrook, Hargon's belief twisted into something unrecognizable. He came to see destruction not as evil, but as purity. The only way to release the world from endless cycles of loss and rebirth. The Dragon Queen had died protecting creation, but Hargon came to believe that her true will was to unmake it, to free all life from suffering. When he discovered the scriptures detailing Malroth, the god of destruction, once sealed during Zoma's reign, he believed he had found the ultimate truth, the final light. And thus, the priest of the Dragon Queen became the prophet of annihilation. So, by the time Dragon Quest II begins, when the soldier stumbles into Midenhol's throne room, bloodied and broken, whispering, Hargon seeks to summon the god of destruction, you are not just hearing the prelude to another war, you are hearing the echo of a promise made centuries ago. A vow born in grief, carried through generations, but now twisted into damnation. Hargon isn't just the antagonist of Dragon Quest II, but he is the living remnant of Erdrick's world. A man who once served the same divine light that birthed Alefgard, now consumed by the shadow of his own fate. However, the protagonist of Dragon Quest II is, this time, not alone, not like Hargon or his ancestor from the first Dragon Quest. Your journey intertwines with your cousins, the Prince of Cannock and the Princess of Moonbrook. The Prince of Cannock represents camaraderie and faith, the belief that unity still holds power, and the Princess of Moonbrook, transformed into a dog by dark magic, symbolizes loss and the cruel reach of despair. Their reunion isn't just a narrative event, it is an act of resistance against the erosion of family, memory, and legacy. And together, the three heirs of Erdrick set up to finish what began long ago. If Zoma represented despair and the Dragonlord embodied temptation, then Hargon is the fanaticism incarnate. He doesn't seek to rule the world, he just wants to end it. His prayers are not for conquest, but for oblivion. It is a chilling evolution of Dragon Quest mythology, the shift from personal evil to cosmic nihilism. And maybe that's what gives Dragon Quest II its power. It is the first existential Dragon Quest as the trilogy's arc moves from creation to preservation and finally to continuation. Each step questioning whether the ideals of heroism can withstand time, loss, and faith turned to madness. From creation to remembrance, and from remembrance to ruin, the Erdrick Trilogy isn't just the story of heroes, it is the story of how humanity defines them. Erdrick's name begins as a promise, becomes a memory, and ends as a myth. When we look at the HD2D remakes, what makes them powerful isn't just nostalgia, it is restoration. It is the act of seeing these stories again, not as old games. Dragon Quest III gives us the birth of courage. Dragon Quest I teaches us the loneliness of legacy, and Dragon Quest II confronts us with what happens when fate itself breaks under the weight of eternity. The trilogy in its entirety is a cycle: light, shadow, and rebirth. And every generation of Dragon Quest reflects that truth. The world forgets its heroes, the gods fall silent, but the torch passes on. And yet, someone always answers the call. That's the beauty of the Erdrick name. It isn't about a single person, but it is about the idea that no matter how many times the darkness returns, someone, somewhere will pick up the sword again. In the end, Dragon Quest II closes the book that 3 began, but it doesn't end the legend. When you defeat Hargon and face the manifestation of Malroth, it feels less like a final battle and more like a test, a challenge of spirits asking whether humanity can still believe in light even after fate itself has failed. From Ortega's sacrifice to Erdrick's rise, from the Dragon Queen's death to Hargon's fall, every moment is part of one eternal heartbeat that still echoes across the genre today. So as Dragon Quest 1 and 2 HD2 the remake approaches, we are not just revisiting an old adventure, but we are stepping back into the myth that started it all. The myth that taught generations what it means to be a hero. And I hope you enjoyed today's video about the story of the Erdrick Trilogy, namely the saga that created history, influenced Final Fantasy and many jrpg titles. Tell me which Dragon Quest is your favorite and which Dragon Quest title you wish me to delve further. Any humble support through Patreon and YouTube join is really appreciated, and I will see you soon in my next video.